Xander Owens never thought a spilled apple juice in aisle 6 would change his life until a tiny girl with curly hair and a serious frown screamed, "My unicorn's drowning," while her frantic mother nearly slipped on a pack of diapers. He rushed over without thinking, lifting the soaked plush toy from a growing puddle. "Well, I think we saved her just in time," he said, kneeling to the child's level, offering her the soggy unicorn like it was made of gold. The little girl sniffled. "Thank you, Mr. Pippa," a soft voice gasped behind him. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry. She just took off." He looked up and froze. The woman standing in front of him was stunning. Auburn hair in a loose twist, gold hoop earrings, blazer over slim jeans. She looked like she belonged on the cover of some lifestyle magazine, not chasing a juice-wielding toddler through a grocery store. "No worries," Xander said quickly, standing. "I've got a 4-year-old myself." They're basically tiny hurricanes. Her eyes flicked to his worn boots and the old hoodie with a faded dad life print. "You're a single dad." "Yeah, Xavier's at home with my neighbor right now. I was just picking up dinner stuff. I work nights, so." "It's a juggle." She blinked like she hadn't expected the honesty. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to thank you, really." "No problem, Pippa's safe, unicorn's safe, all good." He smiled at her, warm and genuine, then gave a little wave to the girl. "You two take care." He started to walk away. "Wait," she called suddenly, pushing hair behind her ear. "Could I ask you something?" "Weird." Xander turned back, curious. "Sure, I have a work emergency. My sitter canceled last minute. Could you God, this sounds insane, watch Pippa for like 3 hours?" "I'll pay you, of course." He stared at her. "You want me, a total stranger, to babysit your daughter?" There was a beat. "You saved her unicorn," she said simply, "and she's smiling at you. She doesn't smile at anyone." He looked down. Pippa was now hugging his leg like they were old friends. "I'll leave you my number. The building has a doorman, and look, I know how this sounds, but I really don't have another option." He hesitated, then sighed. "All right, but I'm not taking money." "You're taking money," she said firmly, already scribbling on a notepad from her handbag. "I'll be back by 6. He glanced at the address. Upper East Side, not exactly his usual zip code. "Okay, Pippa," she said, kneeling to her daughter. "You remember the nice man, Mr. Dad Life," Pippa said proudly. Xander laughed. "Close enough." "All right," the woman said with a breath. "Her name's Pippa. She's allergic to peanut butter, and she'll ask you to play princesses. Just say yes." "Got it. I'm Arabella Grant," he nodded. "Xander Owens." She gave him a quick grateful look, kissed Pippa's forehead, and was gone. By the time Arabella returned to her penthouse 3 hours later, she was half convinced she'd made the worst decision of her life. Then she stepped inside and froze. Pippa was asleep on the couch, a blanket tucked around her. Xander was sitting on the floor, a tiara on his head, surrounded by plastic teacups and glittery wands. He looked up, whispering, "She made me Queen Sparkle." Arabella stared, then laughed softly, covering her mouth. "I hope Queen Sparkle didn't charge overtime," she whispered, walking in. He stood, brushing glitter off his jeans. "She's a good kid. Smart, funny. She told me I need to smile more." Arabella looked at her daughter, then at him. "She's right, you do have a good smile." Xander rubbed the back of his neck. "Thanks. I owe you, seriously." "Let me pay you," he shook his head. "Really, don't worry about it." Arabella frowned slightly. "You work nights, you said." "Yeah, I do deliveries, trying to get my mechanic license, but life stuff keeps popping up." She nodded slowly, studying him. "Well, if you ever want a side gig." "Pippa clearly likes you," he chuckled. "I'll keep that in mind." What started as a one-time favor turned into something else. Arabella called again the next week, then the week after, and then it wasn't just babysitting. It was Xander showing up with homemade mac and cheese because Pippa liked his better. It was them walking through Central Park together while the girls played. It was Pippa calling him Mr. Sparkle Dad and drawing pictures of the three of them. And every time, Arabella noticed something new. The way he always knelt to talk to Pippa at her level. The way he carried her when she got tired, like it was the most natural thing in the world. The way his eyes crinkled when he laughed and how warm he was. He never asked about her job, never pried. Never made assumptions about her clothes or her building or the expensive car that picked her up sometimes. He just saw her, not Arabella Grant, the executive, just Arabella, and that scared her a little, because she hadn't told him, not about her company. Not about the fact that she was the CEO of one of the fastest-growing digital media firms in New York. Not about the penthouse really being hers and not rented. Not about the millions sitting in her account, because Xander looked at her like she was someone real, and she wasn't ready to lose that. "Can I ask you something?" he said one evening after they'd put Pippa and Xavier to bed. They were sitting on her balcony drinking iced tea, city lights sparkling below them. "Sure." "Why me? You could afford anyone. A nanny, a private sitter." "Why ask a guy you met in a grocery store?" Arabella looked at him for a long moment. "Because you were the first person who didn't try to impress me. You were just kind, and warm, and real," he smiled softly. "Well, I'm glad you did." So was she. But the closer they got, the more she knew she couldn't keep her secret forever. And when he found out, she wasn't sure if he'd still look at her the same way. Arabella's phone rang just as she was pulling her heels off in the hallway, the soft thud of them hitting the marble floor echoing faintly in the quiet penthouse. She glanced at the screen, her assistant, Leela. "I need to know if I should confirm your appearance at the gala next Saturday." "The press wants a quote," Leela said without even greeting her. Arabella's eyes flicked toward the living room. Pippa was curled up under a blanket, giggling at something Xander was saying. He was sitting cross-legged on the floor again, this time balancing a plastic cupcake on his head like it was a crown. "I'll get back to you," she said quickly, hanging up before Leela could protest. She stepped into the room, arms crossed. "Are you planning on turning my daughter into a tiny pastry chef?" Xander looked up, a mock expression of offense on his face. "She's the boss, I just follow orders." Arabella leaned against the doorframe. "I noticed you brought cupcakes," he nodded. "Yeah, Xavier and I baked them last night." He insisted they needed pink frosting and edible glitter. I didn't argue. She crouched down, brushing a strand of hair behind Pippa's ear. "I can't tell if you're raising a future baker or a future party planner." "Why not both?" he said with a grin. Arabella hesitated, then stood. "Can I talk to you for a second?" He followed her out to the balcony, the city casting a hazy glow in the distance. The air was cooler tonight, the breeze tugging lightly at the hem of her blouse. "I have to ask," she said, folding her arms. "Why haven't you asked me what I do yet?" Xander leaned against the railing, his gaze steady. "Because if you wanted me to know, you'd tell me." "You're not curious?" "I mean, sure," he said, "but I'm not trying to figure out how to fit into your world. I'm just happy when I'm here." Arabella looked away. "That's the thing, you don't know what my world is," he tilted his head. "Then tell me." She didn't, not yet. Instead, she changed the subject. "Pippa starts swim lessons next week," she said. "I'd like you to keep taking her." "If you're free," he nodded slowly. "Of course." She mentioned wanting to learn how to dive. Arabella gave a short laugh. "She thinks diving means cannonballing. She's 5, that's pretty accurate." She turned to look at him again. "You're different than anyone I've met." Xander shrugged. "I just try to be decent." "No," she said quietly. "It's more than that." A moment passed between them, quiet and charged, then he said, "You're different too, in a good way." She opened her mouth to respond, but her phone buzzed again. She glanced at it, then pressed the screen and turned it over. "Work?" he asked. "Yes, you don't look like you want to answer it." "I don't." He nodded once, then stepped back. "Well, I should get Xavier home. He's probably already passed out on your couch." She followed him to the door. Xavier was indeed asleep, curled sideways on the couch with a book resting on his chest. Xander lifted him gently into his arms. The boy stirred but didn't wake. "You're coming to swim class?" she asked, walking with him to the elevator. "Wouldn't miss it." The elevator doors opened. As he stepped in, he turned. "And if you ever want to tell me about your world, I'll listen." Then the doors closed. Arabella stood there, heart thudding harder than it should have. She didn't know what scared her more, that he still didn't know who she was, or that when he finally found out, he might walk away. 2 days later, it nearly happened. She was in her office, a sleek glass space on the 40th floor of a midtown skyscraper. Her assistant buzzed in. "There's a man in the lobby asking for you. He doesn't have an appointment." Arabella frowned. "Name," he said. "Xander Owens." Her stomach dropped. "Send him up." He arrived looking completely out of place: jeans, a clean but faded t-shirt, and his ever-present messenger bag slung across his shoulder. The receptionist looked like she wanted to stop him, but Arabella waved her off. "Everything okay?" she asked, standing. I had to drop something off, he said, reaching into his bag and pulling out a small paper crown decorated with glitter and rhinestones. Pippa forgot it in my car. Arabella stared at the crown, then at him. You came all the way here for that, she cried when she realized it was missing. Said it was her lucky tiara. Arabella took the crown, her throat tightening. Thank you. He looked around the office, then back at her. This is not what I expected, she exhaled slowly. I was going to tell you. Xander nodded, his face unreadable. You run this place. Yes, he rubbed the back of his neck. So you're not just doing okay, you're successful. I own the company. There was a long pause. Why didn't you tell me? Because every time someone finds out, they treat me differently. I didn't want that to happen with you. I wouldn't have treated you any differently, he said quietly. You say that now. He looked at her for a long moment. I didn't come here to argue, I just came to bring her crown. Arabella reached out, touching his arm. Please don't go. I'm not angry, he said, just surprised. I should have told you, she said. I'm sorry, he nodded once. I need time to think. Then he turned and walked out. Arabella stood frozen, the glittery crown still in her hand, the weight of everything she hadn't said pressing down on her chest. Xander didn't come the next day, or the one after that. Arabella stared at the empty bench in the park where he usually sat while Pippa splashed in the fountain. Her daughter kept glancing over expectantly, holding a juice box in one hand and her tiara in the other. Maybe he got stuck in traffic, Pippa suggested. Arabella forced a smile. Maybe, sweetheart, but she knew better. She'd broken something. Not by lying she hadn't done that, but by letting him believe he knew her when really, he'd only seen the parts she felt safe showing. Now he was gone, and the silence felt louder than she expected. The third morning, she found a small note slipped under her apartment door. The handwriting was careful, almost too neat. Xavier missed Pippa, thought you might want to know he's been asking. No signature, no return address, just a quiet olive branch. Arabella folded the note and placed it on the kitchen counter. She didn't call him, not yet. Instead, she took Pippa to her office. The toddler danced through the glass halls like she owned them, tiara perched firmly on her curls. Arabella's staff watched her with amused expressions, half stunned that their chic, commanding CEO had a daughter who insisted on singing loudly about spaghetti and rainbows in the break room. She's a lot, Arabella said, watching Pippa twirl. She's adorable, Leela replied. Didn't know you had that in you. Arabella raised an eyebrow. You didn't think I had maternal instincts. I didn't think you had glitter in your car, Leela said, grinning. Arabella didn't mention that most of that glitter came from Xander's cupcakes. Later that evening, after putting Pippa to bed, Arabella stood on her balcony, arms wrapped around herself. The wind tugged at her silk robe. Below, the city continued on endless, impersonal, bright. She missed his voice, his ordinary, steady presence. His laugh when Pippa said something outrageous. She picked up her phone. Hey, she said when he answered. Do you have a minute? His voice was calm but guarded. Sure, I'm sorry, she said. I should have told you who I was, I didn't want to ruin what we had. You didn't ruin it, he said. You just made it feel like I wasn't part of it. Her chest tightened. I didn't mean to. I know, he said, but I've spent years trying to build something honest for my son. I can't afford to get pulled into a world where people hide things. Arabella leaned against the railing. It's not like that. It is, he said quietly, but maybe it doesn't have to be. She didn't say anything. After a moment, he spoke again. Xavier's birthday's this weekend. We're having a little thing at the park, nothing fancy, just pizza and balloons. She almost laughed. You're inviting me, I'm telling you, he said. Whether you come is up to you. He hung up. Saturday came faster than she expected. Arabella stood in front of her closet, staring at rows of designer clothes, all of which looked absurdly out of place for a children's birthday party in a public park. She finally settled on jeans and a cotton blouse. No heels. No jewelry, just her. When she and Pippa arrived, the park was already buzzing with kids chasing each other, balloons tied to picnic tables, and a large cardboard sign that read Happy Birthday, Xavier, written in blue marker. Xander was crouched near a cooler, pulling out juice boxes. He looked up when he saw her. His expression didn't change, but he didn't look away either. Pippa ran to Xavier instantly. The two of them disappeared toward the swings, tiaras and all. Arabella stepped closer, hands in her pockets. You showed up, he said. I wasn't going to miss it. He nodded, then offered her a plate. There's pepperoni and cheese. She took the cheese. They sat on the grass while the kids ran wild. Arabella kicked off her shoes, digging her toes into the dirt. Do you ever stop moving? She asked after a while. Only when I fall asleep, he said, and sometimes not even then. Xavier tells me I talk in my sleep. What do you say? Apparently I argue with traffic lights. She laughed. It surprised her how easy it was to be near him again. You didn't have to invite me, she said. I didn't, he replied, but Xavier wanted Pippa there, and I figured. If I'm teaching him to forgive people, I should try doing it too. She looked at him, unsure how much of that was meant for her. I'm not good at saying what I feel, she admitted. You don't have to be perfect, he said. You just have to be honest. Arabella glanced at the kids. Pippa was now wearing a makeshift cape made from a picnic blanket, declaring herself Queen of Cake. You make her feel safe, she said. That's not easy to do, Xander's voice softened. She made it easy. The sun dipped lower behind the trees. Parents began packing up. Kids clutched goodie bags and sticky hands. Arabella helped fold the tablecloths, tying them into neat squares. Thanks for letting us come, she said. Don't thank me yet, he said. I haven't told you what Xavier's demanding next week. She raised an eyebrow. What's that? A backyard talent show? Arabella grinned. Please tell me he's singing. No, he's attempting magic tricks very badly. Sounds like something I can't miss. He looked at her for a long beat. Then don't. She didn't. That night, after tucking Pippa into bed and brushing glitter off her own sleeves, Arabella sat alone in her kitchen, staring at the empty crown on the counter. She didn't know what this was between them, but it was real, and she was ready to stop hiding from it. Arabella didn't expect the talent show to feel like a turning point, but it did. Xavier had insisted it happen in Xander's apartment complex courtyard, which meant folding chairs borrowed from neighbors, a string of fairy lights duct taped to the fence, and a cardboard Stage of Wonders sign that leaned sideways despite its best efforts. Arabella arrived just as Pippa was helping Xavier tie a cape around his shoulders. The boy lit up when he saw her. You made it, he said, holding out a paper program that listed every child's performance, hand-drawn stars dancing across the page. She knelt beside him. Wouldn't miss this for anything. Xander came out carrying a tray of lemonade cups, catching her eye as he passed. There was a quiet moment between them, too brief to be anything but significant. When the show started, it was chaos in the best way. A 6-year-old told knock-knock jokes that made no sense. A pair of twins played a duet on recorders that nearly sent a dog into a barking frenzy. And Xavier, true to form, attempted to pull a magic scarf from his sleeve only to accidentally launch it into the crowd. Everyone clapped anyway. Arabella laughed harder than she had in months, pressed between folding chairs and the smell of popcorn someone had brought in a giant bowl. As the evening wound down, she helped gather chairs, tucking stray candy wrappers into her purse while Pippa drowsily leaned against her hip. Xander came up beside her, hands in his pockets. You survived the chaos. I think I thrived in it, she said. Pippa looked like she was having the time of her life. She's already planning an encore performance. She says next time she's going to sing and juggle. Xander looked over at their kids, now curled up on a picnic blanket as the last of the fairy lights flickered. They make it all worth it, she nodded. They do. There was a pause, not uncomfortable, but filled with something unspoken. I've been thinking, he said finally, eyes still on the kids. I was wrong about something. Arabella turned to him fully. About what? I told you I didn't want to get pulled into a world where people hide things, but I think I was just scared. It's not about your world or mine. It's about whether we build something that feels like ours. Her breath caught. He glanced at her, face serious. I've been raising a kid with leftover pizza and duct tape solutions. I've never had the luxury of thinking past the next week, but with you. I keep catching myself wondering what a year from now might look like. Arabella stepped closer, uncertain but hopeful. And what does it look like? Messy, loud, probably glitter-covered. That sounds accurate, he hesitated. I can't give you penthouses or designer vacations. I already have those, she said. What I don't have is someone who shows up with cupcakes and makes my daughter believe in princesses again. Xander laughed quietly, the sound low and warm. I can be that guy. I know you already are. He looked down at her and for the first time didn't pull away when the space between them shrank. I've never done this before, he said. Not like this. She reached for his hand. Neither have I. But I'd like to try. They stood in the courtyard while the kids dozed on the blanket, fairy lights casting soft halos around them. It wasn't grand or extravagant. It was real. A week later, Arabella invited them both to dinner not in her penthouse, but in a small corner restaurant she discovered years ago and never brought anyone to. The kind of place with mismatched chairs and candles in wine bottles, where the owner greeted her with a hug and no one cared about last names. Xander wore a clean button-down and looked like he wasn't sure whether to sit straighter or relax completely. I think I'm underdressed, he said when she slid into the booth across from him. She raised an eyebrow. You're exactly right. Xavier and Pippa were coloring on the kids' menus, exchanging whispered giggles. Arabella poured him a glass of wine. This place doesn't care who you are. That's why I brought you here. He studied her for a moment. You keep surprising me. You get used to it. Dinner was easy. Laughter filled. And when they stepped back onto the street afterward, the kids sleepy in their arms, Xander turned to her beneath the glow of the street lamp. I've never met anyone like you, she smiled gently. You've said that. I'm saying it again because I still don't believe you're real. She reached up, brushing a leaf from his hair. You are. It took another month. A month of dinners and park days and messy craft projects on Sunday mornings. A month of coordinating school pickups and spilled juice and whispered conversations on her balcony after the kids were asleep. But then, one afternoon, she came home to find Xander and Pippa dancing in the kitchen, music playing from his phone, flour dusting both their shirts. A cake sat half-decorated on the counter, and Xavier was proudly arranging strawberries on top. Arabella leaned against the doorframe, watching them. Xander turned, caught her gaze, and froze. I was going to clean up before you got home. She stepped forward, took the spoon from his hand, and dipped it into the frosting. You did fine. He looked at her, eyes vulnerable. You really want this? Yes, all of it. The mess, the noise, me. She took his face in her hands. Especially you. He kissed her then, right there in the middle of the chaos with Pippa squealing in the background and Xavier pretending to gag dramatically. And it felt like the start of something permanent. 6 months later, they stood in a small garden behind a courthouse, their children tossing flower petals and holding hands. Arabella wore a simple dress, her hair loose around her shoulders. Xander wore a navy suit that didn't quite fit but made her heart ache anyway. There were no reporters. No announcements, just them, their kids, and a vow spoken softly between smiles, to build something honest, fragile, and fierce. She had fallen for a man with flour on his sleeves and a tired smile that made her feel seen in a way no one ever had. And now he was hers, not because of what she owned, but because of who they were. 2 parents, 2 hearts, 4 hands rebuilding something beautiful, together. Forever. The wedding had been exactly what they wanted, small, heartfelt, and surrounded by the only people who mattered. But it wasn't until they returned to their home, now truly their home together, that the weight of everything they'd built began to settle in. Arabella stood in the doorway of the spare room, watching as Xavier and Pippa debated over where to hang their new glow in the dark constellation stickers. The walls had been painted a soft teal at Pippa's request, and Xavier had insisted on adding a chalkboard wall for important science stuff. Their laughter drifted down the hall like music, and she leaned her head against the doorframe, her arms folded loosely across her chest. Xander joined her, a screwdriver in one hand and a roll of painter's tape in the other. They've officially declared this neutral territory, he said. No princess castles, no racetracks, just stars and a shared snack drawer. Arabella glanced up at him. Progress? I never imagined this would be my life, he said quietly. A real home, a family, not just surviving the day but actually planning for next week. You're not the only one, she replied, reaching over to take the screwdriver from him and setting it on the windowsill. I used to think love was only for people who didn't have deadlines and board meetings. I didn't know it could look like this. Xander shifted, his expression thoughtful. I've been thinking about something big. She waited, sensing the seriousness in his voice. I want to finish my certification. Not just for the shop, I want to open my own garage. A place where guys like me can bring their kids, learn, work, grow something real. I've been saving. Quietly. It's not much yet, but it could be. Arabella's lips parted, not in surprise, but in something deeper. You should do it. I know it's risky. So is loving someone, she said, stepping closer. But you didn't let that stop you either. He laughed under his breath, then looked at her with a kind of intensity that always made her heart skip. You think I can really pull it off, with everything else? I do, she said. And if you ever need a business partner? Well, I know a woman who's pretty good with numbers. You offering to invest, I'm offering to believe in you. That's worth more. He pulled her into a kiss, slow and certain, like he was anchoring himself to the moment. When they pulled apart, Pippa was standing in the doorway, her arms crossed. Are you two going to kiss forever? She asked, clearly unimpressed. Because Xavier says the stickers won't stick without supervision. Arabella laughed. We're coming. That evening, they all curled up on the couch, a movie playing in the background, though no one was really paying attention. Xavier had fallen asleep on Xander's lap, and Pippa was curled into Arabella's side, her fingers still clutching a plastic tiara. I forgot to tell you, Arabella murmured as she brushed a curl from Pippa's forehead. I turned down the keynote in Paris next month. Xander glanced down at her. You did, she nodded. I don't want to miss this, any of it. I've flown across the world for rooms full of strangers. But this, she gestured to the blanket fort still standing in the corner of the room, the half-eaten popcorn bowl on the coffee table. This is where I want to be. Xander kissed her temple. You'll still change the world. Maybe, she murmured, but I'd rather build one first. With you. The next morning, they woke up to the smell of burnt toast. Xavier had attempted breakfast, and Pippa had decided syrup was appropriate for scrambled eggs. It was chaotic, loud, and absolutely perfect. Later that afternoon, Arabella took a call from her lawyer. The old brownstone she'd kept vacant for years, once her father's had finally been cleared for renovation. She walked into the kitchen, where Xander was helping Pippa glue googly eyes onto craft sticks. There's a space available, she said, watching him carefully. A building I own, near the park. Good foot traffic, quiet street, you could start your garage there. Xander blinked. Wait, what? I want to give it to you, not because I think you need help, but because I want to invest in who you are. And in what you're building. He set the glue down, crossed to her, and framed her face with his hands. You've already given me everything. Then let me give you this too, his voice cracked slightly. I love you. And I love you, she whispered. A year later, the garage was open. Painted a deep charcoal with a gold sign that read Owens & Co., Family Auto. It buzzed with life daily. There was a kids' corner with puzzles and books, and a coffee station stocked with Arabella's favorite blend. Her company had quietly funded an outreach program under a new initiative, support for working parents in skilled trades. Pippa and Xavier spent their afternoons there after school, working on a used go-kart they'd been restoring piece by piece. Arabella would arrive after her meetings, still in heels, her arms full of takeout and her heart full of something she'd never had before: peace. They hosted block parties in the lot, taught free weekend classes for teens, and held a family movie night every first Friday of the month. One evening, as the sun dipped low and cast golden streaks over the pavement, Xander pulled Arabella aside, away from the chatter and music. I want to show you something, he said, leading her to a back room she hadn't seen yet. Inside was a small office his. On the wall, framed neatly, was a crayon drawing Pippa had made a year ago. It was of the four of them, stick figures grinning beneath a rainbow. Above it, in Xavier's handwriting, were the words, "Home is where we fix things." Arabella looked at it, then back at him. You did this, he said. You made room for this life. You didn't try to change me. You let me grow into it. We grew into it together. They stood there, the quiet wrapping around them like a promise. Later, while the kids danced in the parking lot and neighbors passed around lemonade, Xander pulled her in and kissed her again, this time not from fear or longing, but from certainty. The kind that only comes when two people stop reaching for perfection and start choosing each other, flaws and all, over and over again. They never needed a castle or a crown. They'd built something better, a life. A home. A love that didn't need fixing, only nurturing. And that was more than enough. Forever.